Hello. I was thinking about what to do for our very significant and epic 20 subscriber special. And actually, I think last time I checked, we're up to 22 subscribers. So, I mean, thank you so much. I do really appreciate it. That's very nice. I was on Facebook and they reminded me that it's the 14th anniversary of this post I made in 2010. And I actually think about this post a lot, especially when I'm like feeling down on myself and I'm like, how much progress have I made? Blah, blah, blah. Um, and I think back on this and I think it's just a great reminder of kind of this very negative, kind of pessimistic, argumentative headspace that I was in when I was, like 20, really when I was in college. And so I thought it would be fun to go through this post, talk about, how my feelings have changed on certain things, how they haven't changed on certain things. Um, and this post, I believe the wording was, it was a list of things I hate that everyone else loves. Uh, and I do want to preface this by saying, there's nothing wrong with being negative, with disliking things. I dislike tons of things, and it's important to be honest with people, you know. And yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. It was just the overall mindset I was in. I feel was not a healthy or productive one, and I feel like while I'm still in progress, obviously. Uh, I have done a lot to kind of curb this problem and not make it as much of an issue in my life. Now I think I dislike things just, like a normal person does. So let's get started with this list of things that I hated in 2010 with ketchup. I'm still not a huge ketchup guy, but I definitely think it has its purpose. You always want a dipping sauce that just makes eating things more fun. And if you don't have any other dipping sauce for fries, you're a little bored with just, a big pile of fries. They all taste the same. Yeah, some ketchup. Some ketchup can help. Some ketchup can be nice. And I also like to use ketchup when I make fried rice or when I'm trying hopelessly to make an omurice. And that freaks some people out, but that is a thing. That is a thing. I saw it in this movie, Tom Popo, this Japanese movie, where there's a scene where this little kid is really hungry. So this guy he breaks into a kitchen where there's like a roaming security guard, and he makes this kid a rice omelet super fast using ketchup. I think those are the only ingredients. I think it's just rice, eggs, and ketchup. And he makes him this omelet super fast while the guy is doing his round. So the guy leaves the room, they break in, they make the omelet in like a minute, and then they sneak back out the door as the guy comes back around. And that's the scene. That scene had like a big impact on me. I mean, like I'm not great at cooking, but it made me like interested in cooking. It made me like want to cook stuff. Uh, so yeah, ketchup. It has its place. It's not. I'm not using it on everything, but it's a tool for good. The sun. I said that I hated the sun, which is pretty grim. I obviously love the sun. The sun is a good thing. It helps. Couldn't live without the sun. It's doing its part. Um, I will say, there are aspects of the sun that are a little burdensome. It can burn you. It can cause melanoma. You know, and generally, I'm not a big fan of heat. I would rather be too cold than too hot. And lately, it's not too bad today, but it has been so humid lately, and it has been kind of a bummer. But yeah, while I'm still not the biggest fan of heat, I mean, the sun itself, I think the sun is a positive thing. And I would say overall, it is a net good. We got the beach. I'm still not a huge fan of the beach. I do like the Beach Boys now, which wasn't on that list, but I think because none of my friends like the Beach Boys either, so I couldn't like rub that in their face that I didn't like the Beach Boys. But yeah, like the Beach Boys, who I used to think were cheesy and lame, still don't like the beach that much. I mean, I think it's very pretty, and I like sitting by the water. I think that's very relaxing. Um, but you know, I agree with Anakin Skywalker that sand is kind of lame and that it's coarse and rough and it gets everywhere. And like I said before, heat. I'm not a huge heat guy, and I'm also not a huge fan of being around a lot of people who are like shirtless and not wearing much, and stuff. I think people in general should just, have more shame. Shame should be more encouraged in our society. But yeah, overall, I'm not a huge beach guy. But there are worse places to be. What do we get? Yeah, Lord of the Rings. Okay, so I say Lord of the Rings here because that was the most popular example at the time. But this is really more fantasy. I really wasn't a big fantasy guy at the time. In fact, I didn't really get into the genre until I played The Witcher 3. And, that game plus the DLCs probably takes like 150 hours to complete. So by the end of that, I was like, I love fantasy. I love goblins and I love dragons and you know, I love all those creepy little monster guys. I love dwarves, So so I haven't seen the Lord of the Rings movies since I was a teenager, and I was negative on them at the time. But I do know for a fact that there are elements of them now that I really admire. I mean, the Howard Shore's music is really great, and some of the performances are wonderful. Like Andy Serkis, obviously amazing, and Ian McKellen. Um, Sean Astin in the last one really brought it from what I remember. And yeah, I'd like to watch him again. But overall, I think I would enjoy it much more now that I have let fantasy into my heart and have started to appreciate that genre significantly more than I used to. This one is Creepy Little Girls. And I still, it's an overused trope, but I mean, the photo you have here is like one of the best examples of it is the Grady twins from The Shining, who are excellent creepy little girls, kind of set the creepy little girl standard. But it's just one of those horror cliches that after a while, you go to a horror movie and there's this some little girl just staring blankly into the distance, and she's talking to somebody or something, and then her mom comes in the room and she stops talking, and her mom's like, who are you talking to, sweetie? And the little girl's like, I'm talking to Mr. Wiggles. She lives in my music box. And I'm just, it's just like, okay, fine. I'm sure he does. I've seen that before, but it's not my jam. But I think like any cliche, it can be used badly or it can be used well. It's all about, is it a very derivative, creepy little girl, or are you bringing something different to it? You know. Let's see here. Yeah, Tom Hanks. Yeah, used to hate Tom Hanks. Used to think he was super overrated and was just kind of famous for being likable rather than for being a good actor. And then I saw this movie called Captain Phillips. And at the end of Captain Phillips, there's this scene where, spoiler alert, Captain Phillips gets rescued from the pirates. And he's undergoing like like a medical checkup, to see how he's doing. And he kind of like breaks down in front of the doctor and all of this, and kind of lets out all this stuff he's been holding in. And I watched that movie and I was like, wow, Tom Hanks is a good actor. And now, since then, I've seen him deliver tons of wonderful performances. He was great playing Mr. Rogers. And, yeah, I'm just generally a fan. And now I've gone back to performances that I had, maligned, and seen a ton of value in them. So, yeah, I think Tom Hanks is a very good actor, and I think he has a lot more range than I gave him credit for. And, he has a more old-fashioned kind of style of acting, that kind of Jimmy Stewart style of acting, where it's just kind of this, good-natured kind of everyman persona, but he can bring some really cool shades to it, and he has, I would say he has even more range than he gets credit for. So, yeah, very good actor. Uh, on the Road. That's just my Google search. There it is. There it is. not editing anything. On the Road, to be honest, have not read it. I obviously didn't read it at the time I wrote this. I think I read parts of it in class, but it was just this thing where, it was this thing that, everybody loved and all of this. And I was bitter at the time. It was just like, why does everybody love this book, but they don't like my stuff, that I write? Which is, just the kind of mania that you're in when you're young and you think that like the stuff that you're creating is like super important and like, oh, if people could just see it, you know it's a double-edged sword, that kind of ambition when you're young, because you're like creating more, but then you have this complex about, oh, why doesn't anybody give a shit? I'm mad now, so yeah, once again, haven't read On the Road. The parts of it I have read I wasn't in love with, but I would like to give it an honest try sometime and just read it from beginning to end and see what all the hype's about. Ernest Hemingway. This is another example. I was in multiple, at least two, writing classes where somebody told me to write more like Ernest Hemingway. And that's because, I was trying to write in this really flashy way and use a lot of adjectives and stuff. And I did use too many adjectives. That was a common criticism, and I think that was accurate. But, I'm not a big Hemingway guy either. Like, Hemingway is like the other end of the spectrum where it's like super simple, super direct language. And that can be very pretty at times, that kind of understated thing. But I don't think there's a hard and fast rule to writing well. I think you have to write based on the demands of the specific project you're working on. So I would never tell anybody to write more like Hemingway or more like Dave Eggers, who's my favorite writer and inspired me a lot. It depends on what you're working on. Sometimes a more Hemingway-esque approach might be nice for a certain piece. But, in terms of am I reading Hemingway all the time? No, he's still not really my jam. E. E. Cummings, I don't know why I had such a problem with E. E. Cummings. I think I thought he was like too whimsical. And now I love whimsical shit, I got no problem at all with whimsy. If anything, I encourage it, So, and he was just a really creative guy. I mean, you can see here, you could look at the way he formatted his poems a lot of the time, the way he would, because he would often have lines that, go across and down and all over the place. And it's like, is that a gimmick, or is that like a rhythm thing? Is he like, like what's the form of it? What's he using it for? Is he using it for good or for evil? And, I just think he was like brimming over with ideas, and he was a really creative guy, and he cared not only about writing something good, but he cared about the experience of the reader and wanting to what's the word? I can't think of the word, but he wanted to facilitate them reading it in a certain way that he thought would make them appreciate it more, make them enjoy it more. So you know I think there's a lot of validity to it. Uh, Walt Whitman, got no issue with Walt Whitman. I think at the time I thought he was cheesy and kind of corny, but I do think that cheesiness slash corniness, it can come out of being derivative and stuff, but it can also come out of just being very honest or very open. So once again, am I reading Walt Whitman all the time? No. But do I have any objection to Walt Whitman? Also no. In Rainbows, yeah. I remember when In Rainbows came out, everybody was just in love with it. And some people were saying, maybe, oh, is this maybe even the best Radiohead album and stuff like this? And I was very resistant to it. I think because everybody just really liked it. And I was like, it's not that good, you know? And then when King of Limbs came out, I was like, this is awesome. You're all wrong. Like, no matter what people did, they were wrong. And now, it's still not my favorite Radiohead album, but there's some amazing stuff on it. I mean, I love Videotape. I love Reckoner. Uh, I love Faust Arp. What else is on there? I'm just doing this all from memory. Body Snatchers. I love Body Snatchers. Yeah, it's a really good album. So I don't know. I don't know what I was doing, but I like it now. Hilary Swank. Yeah, at the time, Hilary Swank had won like 2 Oscars in like 5 years or something. And, she delivered some performances that, I mean, she's like any actor. She's like, you're better suited to certain roles than for others. And maybe she didn't always, pick the roles that were like, that were the best for her. But when she's in a compatible role, she's like really, really good. Like she won her first Oscar for Boys Don't Cry, and I think that was a totally justified win. She was great in that movie, and I have trouble. She was good in Million Dollar Baby. I have trouble separating my feelings on her performance from like my feelings on the movie because I'm not a huge fan of the movie. Um, but yeah, I mean, she's like any actor. Sometimes she's great, sometimes she's not that good. I got no issue with Hilary Swank. Steven Soderbergh. This is connected because they've worked together. I think like a couple of times, and I saw her in Logan Lucky a couple of years ago that he directed. A couple. It's like six. Time is going by so fast. It's 7 years, something like that. And yeah, that's one of those performances that I didn't think really worked. But Soderbergh, I got nothing against Soderbergh. The thing is, he's one of those guys who he comes out with a movie, and I'm always curious to check it out. And I always feel like it's like just on the edge of being really good. Like it's not quite something I love, but it's like almost something that I would be really into. If there was just this little shift. But he has directed some movies I really like. I'll say Logan Lucky again. I mean, other than that one little part, I enjoyed that movie thoroughly. I mean, and Ocean's 11 is fun. I mean, the thing is, he keeps getting so close to making a movie that I'm gonna love. That I still check out his work when he comes out with something new. I'm interested in going to see it. He did a movie a couple of years ago. I think it was called No Sudden Move. That was an interesting movie. I like that. Um, but yeah, he's pretty good. He's pretty good. I love he made one movie that I love, which is called The Informant, with Matt Damon delivering one of his most ridiculous performances and a great supporting performance by Scott Bakula. I think that's a really fun movie. So I mean, yeah, I have mixed feelings on Soderbergh, but no hatred, no hatred for Soderbergh. This is maybe the most baffling one to me because I'm a huge Star Wars fan. And I mean, you can even see in the thread that I'm like, well, I hate Star Wars except for Boba Fett and Chewbacca and the beginning of the first one and the ice planet stuff in the second one. Like even when I was being negative about it and acting like I didn't like it, there were still aspects of it, plenty of aspects of it that I loved. And when I was a kid, me and my dad would, play the Dark Forces games, Dark Forces 1 and 2 and stuff, and I would really enjoy being in that universe, and since then, yeah, I love it, and I kept up with it for a long time. The Disney Plus shows got a little overwhelming, but I am going to catch up at some point. And yeah, it's one of my favorite film series now, and I'm surprised I felt so negatively about it, to be honest. And I was kind of down on sci-fi in general, which is crazy because I love sci-fi. It's one of my favorite genres. A lot of my favorite movies and video games and books are all sci-fi, but at the time I was just like, it was the same thing. It's like, oh, sci-fi is not that good except for this and this and this and that. It was like fantasy. It was like, that's nerd shit. I like, real powerful emotional art and stuff. And I didn't know how to have fun, So since I have learned that fun is actually a nice thing to have, which is improved. It's improved my life. I will say that. Bruce Springsteen, yeah. I used to think Bruce Springsteen was really cheesy. I still think he's a little cheesy at times, but I find him endearingly cheesy now. And I love a lot of his albums. I love The River. I love Nebraska. I love Wrecking Ball. I love Tunnel of Love. Basically, I like all of his depressing albums. I like Ghost of Tom Joad. So yeah, all the sad ones. Um, but he's written a lot of really fantastic songs. Darkness on the Edge of Town, that whole album. Yeah, Bruce is great. Baz Luhrmann. This is one I'm still not a Baz Luhrmann guy. I'm just like I'm not on his artistic wavelength. He's the talented guy from like a filmmaking perspective. It's just not my jam. You know, I've tried, but that doesn't preclude him from making a film I'll like in the future. I liked parts of Elvis. There were aspects of it I enjoyed, mostly Tom Hanks playing that weird, creepy goblin man. But it's still not totally my jam. Now this is Morgan Freeman, and I didn't say that I disliked Morgan Freeman. I've always thought Morgan Freeman was a really good actor. What I disliked specifically, I think the words I used were Morgan Freeman narrating everything on Earth or something like that. And I still do find it funny when he, like when he popped up in the trailer for Alpha a few years ago, where it was like that caveman movie where the guy was hanging out with like his dogs and stuff, like a pack of wild dogs or something. I didn't see that movie, but it's just funny that like even when he's not in a movie, they'll still bring him in. And like War of the Worlds too, where at the end, he's just like, oh, it was our germs, and you just saw the aliens blew up, and you're like, well, were our germs on the grenade? I don't know. Like I know it was germs in the book, but in the Spielberg movie, doesn't seem like it's germs, really. Maybe it's germs in conjunction with explosions. I don't know, but I mean, yeah, Morgan Freeman, he got a great voice. He might as well use it. You know, works for me. And then finally, the Beatles. And this is probably the big one. I think I said in the post that I disliked the majority of the Beatles catalog. So there were some Beatles songs that I liked. But overall, I think it was mostly like the John stuff and some of the George stuff. I thought Paul was really corny and that all of his stuff was lame. And he's actually become in recent years, this is just over the past maybe like 2-3 years, he's become my favorite songwriter in the group by far. And I kind of got into Paul at the same time I got into the Beach Boys. When I was just like, oh, this music that I thought was incredibly lame now holds all of this significance to me. And I know that those two bands were like, kind of friendly rivals and kind of in competition with each other artistically. So let me go back to some of the Beatles stuff and some of Paul's stuff and see if I appreciate that more now. And I appreciated it tremendously. I think everybody goes through a rebellious the Beatles are overrated phase when they're young. At least a lot of people do. I mean, you either fall in love with them and they introduce the whole world of music to you and nothing is ever the same again, or you listen to it and you're like, this isn't that good. Those seem to be the two reactions people can have. And I, at this point in my life, I have come to the conclusion that it is that good, for me at least. So that's about it. And this is the original post here, as you can see. So I'll just leave that up on the screen for a while. Yeah, down here I talked about things I like that nobody else likes. Our love to admire. Yeah, Interpol hasn't really aged well for me. I think the first like 3 or 4 records, there's some good stuff on there, but Assassination of Jesse James by the Coward Robert Ford, still one of my favorite movies, maybe one of my top 10 favorite movies. And I think this was a result of I just shown it to my dad, and my dad was like, why did you show me this? This is really boring. And I think maybe one of my friends had said something similar, so I was like, you just don't understand art, man. Carnivale. I don't even remember Carnivale. I think I was upset that it got canceled after season 2 because it got canceled on a cliffhanger or something. I don't know. I remember it being a pretty good show. The Long Goodbye. I've seen, Letterboxd does those 5 favorite movies list, and I like it seems like a quarter of those people picked The Long Goodbye, so I think other people like that movie too. And then Pick Up on South Street, is one of those movies that's really fun, but I've just come to the conclusion that it's like maybe like one of my 5 favorite movies ever. And I don't expect other people to feel that way. I think it's just like a really fun noir movie to a lot of people, and that's fine, because that's what it is. And then nauseatingly horrible game shows. Notice that, I still enjoy watching game shows. I still love, like Jeopardy and Family Feud and all of that. But notice that even here, even when I'm talking about something I like, I have to like put that kind of negative spin on it so that people are like, just so you know, I know this is dumb and I like it anyway, but I'm smart enough to know it's dumb. Um, so yeah, that's a little look into who I was in 2010 and how I've kind of tried to rejigger my brain a little bit in the intervening years. And that is it. Thank you very much for 22 subscribers, and here's to 23. Farewell.